Okay, so my idea for this layout is that I'm going to use these paints, which I chose these colors because they go with my daughter's shirt. And I'm going to use this jelly plate, and I'm just going to create some patterns on this page. I'm just going to play around, and then whatever I end up liking, I'm going to lay these hearts over it, over the sections I like, and then cut around it and fill the heart with the sections of the print that I make that I like. I chose some stencils to use with the jelly plate, but I picked patterns that are small enough that'll be able to be seen within these hearts because they're kind of smaller. So here are some stencils that I chose. So we've got stars, I don't even know what this is called, and then a really tiny dot and a bigger dot. So let's see what happens. So an important tip of working with jelly plates is using high quality paint. So this is a circle 3-inch jelly plate here, and I'm rolling some paint on with a brayer, and I didn't put enough paint on. And so I ended up using that piece of paper as a scratch piece of paper, and the other, I pull another piece of paper in that I use more intentionally to create a pattern. But it's funny because I end up using that scratch paper more for the patterns that I use inside of the heart. But the reason that having thick paint and quality paint is so important is because the more runny it is, the less control that you have with your image. So I've used some pretty low quality paint that I just had sitting around on other prints, and I've noticed, or that some of this paint that I'm using is super old and it's also more oily and runny. And I've noticed a real difference in the quality of the transfer when the paint is not quality and when it's not thick. I think old paint probably separates. Maybe that's part of the problem. Some of this paint is like, my husband told me, because I got it from his parents' house. Um, they recently passed and we were going through their house, and I found all this paint, and some of it he said he remembers from when he was young, and he's like 40, so it might be like 25, 30 years old. I'm surprised it's even still working. So anyway, I ended up doing sort of like my excess would be on one page, and then the other page was a mix of these circles, and I put a stencil on the jelly plate and rolled over it. But I was noticing as I was doing that, it wasn't transferring. And I think, again, it's the paint, because other times when I do it, it works. The other thing that I was realizing was that as I was wiping it and cleaning it with a baby wipe, it was diluting the paint because I wasn't drying it. So now I've learned every time after I use it to wipe it with a baby wipe and then also wipe it with a microfiber towel so that it really gets dry. Because if it's already thin paint or not quality paint, then that's just going to make the problem worse. The other thing I found is you cannot brayer over a stencil. That doesn't work. You have to use a palette knife like I'm going to use here. So I'm just running the paint through this stencil just to create some dots. And then I end up using, I think, a water brush, or maybe I just used the paint to create some splatters that I really liked how that looked as well. I actually don't remember. I'm going to have to watch here. And then I was cleaning my palette knife on the paper there, and I really liked how that looked as well. So it's funny how much just creating a mess can end up being pretty and how much you can end up liking it. Okay, so that's an art crayon. That's what I ended up doing. Vicki Boutin art crayon, put it on some plastic, spray some water on it, dip your paintbrush in it, and then tap your paintbrush over the paper, and it just creates some splatters. So it's so funny, the left there is supposed to be just my leftover piece of paper, but it's what I ended up liking. So now I'm just moving the hearts over the paper until I find a section that I like, and then just gluing it down with some clear glue. And then I kept the rest of what I made here. I'll use it on some other layout. I've been collecting little pieces of art that I've made, and I'm going to hopefully use them at some point. These didn't dry before I started cutting them, so they kind of moved as I was cutting them. Ideally, you'd wait, but that's hard. So originally my idea was to have them arranged like that I had taken a picture of on my phone because I liked the way it looked, but I didn't think that it looked very balanced to have them in that arrangement, so I ended up doing more of a horizontal arrangement there. And then I thought, well, it's a little bit too white of a background, a little too stark. So then I took some of the pattern that I had created and cut some little circles out and sort of arranged them behind the hearts for a little bit more of the bursts of that pattern and of those colors. And then I put an E for my daughter. Her name is Ellie, and then a 4 because she's 4 year old in this picture. 4 years old. I don't know why that was so hard to say. 4 years old in this picture. This took a while to kind of arrange in a way that seemed visually pleasing. And I did pop dots on 2 of the hearts to raise them. And then that heart there on the left, that yellow one, the solid one, I felt like I wanted more blue. And so I have a lot of pieces of chipboard that I've kept for a long time, but they have some kind of words on them that I haven't found a use for. And I had this one, I think from a Stories by the Month kit, that says "Thank you, Dad" on it. And so what I did is I dipped it in some blue pigment ink, and I actually replaced that yellow felt heart with it because I wanted to pull more of that blue out. And I really liked the way that that looked. I didn't do a great job covering it. I did 2 layers, but you can still kind of see that it says "Thank you, Dad" on it. If you look really closely, you'll be able to see probably in the zoomed in photos. I don't think that I videotaped myself changing that heart out, so you might not be able to see that part. That's like a little leather, I think from the Light Story kit, that says "Love." I love that little piece there. Oh, I am going to dip this here. So I'm taking it, I'm just pushing it down into the pigment ink. That's the first layer, and then I have to do another layer. You can kind of see it there on the bottom left. It says "Thank you." Thank you, Dad. But nobody, I mean, you can't see it very well in person. You can only see it here because it was so close up. Love the way this turned out. Fun turning a mess into something fun.